And why don't you go ahead and do the quorum and minutes?
All right, we do have a quorum, so we're ready to move forward. Also, the meeting was noticed properly. I sent the draft September board meeting minutes out right after the meeting and had several comments, minor changes, so we did some cleanup, couple changes on those, and I would like to ask for a motion to make those official.
So moved.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
7-0, okay.
Well, 6 technically.
I'm sorry, 6. We'll go with Kathy on her vote.
We'll have her catch up later.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Looks like we just have Denny on. Denny is a new owner, so welcome, Denny. Just to bring everyone up to speed, and Denny, I don't know if you were aware of what we did yesterday, but we annually do a budget workshop and then follow up with a board meeting the following day to go over the new budget and ultimately get it approved for the new year. We spent the better part of 5 hours yesterday going through and hammered out the budget. Most of it is complete. We'll walk through that today. A couple things I did want to say for the record, even though we don't have many folks on, is this has been a crazy year with COVID and everything. I just want to obviously thank everyone, both staff, owners, and otherwise, for putting up with a lot of frustration early on, a lot of chaos during the rental season, and we made it through it. We didn't have anything crazy in the form of outbreaks. Obviously we're moving into the colder season and we need to keep our guard up, but I think we did pretty good. Additionally, as we mentioned in September at the board meeting, we have had kind of a year of transition with staff turnover. It's important to say for the record that Dave Dunn, we had a little going away party for Dave on Thursday night. For anybody that was not aware of that, he is going to take a sabbatical. I think he's camping in Moab right now. He may come back in the spring as a consultant and help out some, but he's had requested, as I think everyone's aware, about a year and a half ago, for us to find a way to get him the ability to slow down and spend some time with his family as he's gotten older, and he's now officially doing that. So. Tim and Lisa on board, one of the things we tasked them with was really doing a complete overview of the property, the systems, the technical infrastructure, as well as, the property, maintenance issues in general. We've kind of been, Denny, for your benefit, Dave's been with us for about 16 years. And since this board is largely an absentee board, we've largely always relied on the staff to keep us up to speed. And as we've had this change in staff, one of the things we task these folks with is let's really look under the hood, figure out what we need to do. Is there anything that perhaps we've been on autopilot on? Do we need to do technical upgrades to systems, that kind of thing? So that's really been the work in process since these guys were hired earlier this year. Had best rental season of the year. That certainly will be reflected in the budget. Just sharing that, I think COVID certainly helped with that. But again, I think our property is getting more and more attractive. The success that we've had with Glacier has certainly brought more and more people in, and I think Heather continues to anticipate we'll have that last year. We've also had an enormous turnover and enormous changes to our real estate. When I first got on the board, I think we had 60 some units on the market. What'd you say yesterday, Joe? We got 3 right now?
3 active on the market for sale and 2 pending sale.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of new owners, a lot of changes as a result, changes to the number of rental properties as a result of that. So it's been an interesting year and a half. So at this point, I'm going to move into reports unless there's any questions from anyone. Okay, Kathy just texted. She's having some little computer problems, so she's working on getting in. Okay, absent no questions, I definitely just want to kind of get through these so we can get to the budget. Water update, everybody's aware we have been working with Glacier to get a new water agreement in place. Again, Denny, for your benefit, in case you weren't aware, we have historically been supported for TV, internet, water, telephone, cable, all was delivered by Glacier. Over the course of the last 3 years, we've migrated away from Glacier for everything other than water. We can't migrate away from them on water because they own the water plant and they provide not only Glacier, but the surrounding communities. So we've had an agreement in place with them that dates back 30 some years. It was supposed to be renegotiated in 2013. We have been working on getting that renegotiated for 6 years. They have been not overly responsive, but the last year we've really tried to push them to get it done as they've started a new water district. And that is still an ongoing negotiation. Not a whole lot to share there. We are hopeful we are getting closer to the finish line. We've done an enormous amount of work, provided an enormous amount of feedback to them as to our water cost. And when we get into the budget, we'll talk about the reductions that we've been able to pull off as a result of that work. Restaurant report, just by way of quick update, we do have a couple that bought property here. I think they moved in May or June. They had been inquired about moving here and taking the restaurant space over about a year ago. They are still on target, I believe, to try to get it open before the snow. Well, I won't say before the snow flies because that's tomorrow. Before the ski season gets started and before our busy winter months. So that's still their goal. They have put, according to Gary, some 60, 70 plus hours working in the restaurant, getting it cleaned up, dealing with furniture upgrades, things like that. So that's still a work in progress. We haven't had a restaurant in a year and a half or so. They're 2 years, well, I guess it's 2 years now. At any rate, we want to have it back. We want to have a bar. We're hopeful. These guys are very driven to get it done. So we're hopeful to get that taken care of, and that's still on track.
Hey, Scott, two real quick questions. Have we signed an agreement with them now on the
We
restaurant?
have a lease.
Oh, yeah.
We do have a lease.
Okay,
We
Yeah, that's
did not.
I mean, lease is a loose term because they're not paying rent at this stage. But what we did is we put an agreement in place. It's got a 2-year window. I believe it's 24 months, after which we can renegotiate once they get off the ground.
okay. And second question for you and Gary, there was something that went out to the ownership about a liquor license, Gary or Scott, do you know how that's going? Are we okay? Do they need more feedback?
I don't think we get visibility into that. I mean, as long as you bring it up, even though we're just talking to 8-10 people here, that survey, I guess, is required to go up by La Plata County just to make sure nobody objects to having a liquor license. So you have to approve or reject it. I sent mine back in. I haven't gotten any update on it. I assume it's going forward. It shouldn't be a Herculean task because we've had a liquor license here on site for many years before. But obviously, as a new owner, he's had to go through that. So I don't have an update on it.
Their meeting with the county, I believe, is November 24th.
So there's still time to respond to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's still time to
I
respond.
didn't do it. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rick, what do we got on the ARC report today? Why don't we rifle through that and then we'll go straight into the budget.
Okay. First one, Unit 226. They're just wanting to replace the windows. The ones that they're wanting to use are a different brand from what we've ever used before. I think it's Jeld-Wen. And we had told them as long as they match what's existing, we don't care what brand. So we've told them they just need to match. Unit 624, 625. This owner just they had an existing fireplace and they're remodeling and just wanted to move the fireplace over. So it was going to move the penetration, but they understand everything as far as accepting responsibility. Unit 765.
Excuse me, Rick. Sorry.
Alex.
Yeah, weren't they putting in a second fireplace upstairs? I thought that's what,
Oh, he told me they wanted to move it over.
that's what he told, okay.
So even irregardless,
Yeah,
yeah, he knows.
okay.
And then unit 765, they want to install a laundry room and they want to add a vent for the dryer. And it's going to be like many other units down in Gambelo, where it'll be vented down through the floor. And then the last one that we have for ARC approval was by unit 776. And that owner is requesting to have install a camera outside facing the front door.
Okay, so that's all of them?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the first three sound like pretty much normal requests, unless I'm missing something. Tim, have you had a chance to look at all of them?
Yep.
Everything's normal. They just have to submit plans, do whatever they do. You approve them and we're good to go, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, just to be clear, Tim will approve the color on the Gen Weld windows?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Geld Wind, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yes. I should know that. They're a sponsor of my
so-
golf tournament.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
nothing out of the ordinary on the first three. Common requests. The last one's just the one we need to either approve, deny, or defer.
All right. We're recording, aren't we? Yeah, I gotta temper myself here.
Yeah, I've forgotten that a few times, as everybody knows.
So two things on this. We set precedent in the past on these silly ass cameras. Our rule 3 years ago, whenever it was the cameras were allowed as long as they were not obtrusive. They were hidden under eaves and areas where they weren't seen externally, and that they were only facing internally and covering doors for ingress and egress to the property in case somebody was getting broken into. It was deemed a security approval, so to speak. I do know that for whatever reason, the one owner that we did approve apparently still has cameras on the outside that are not compliant. And if we're going to move forward our choices really are we happy with the precedent we set on the first camera approval? And if so, are we open to other residents having the same, subject to some review of the cameras and the installation and, repair upon removal, all of those kind of things. If we are comfortable with that, then we're opening up, the option for other folks to do it. I still am not comfortable with the Nest cameras, and for a variety of reasons. We've already covered that. I think they're not a huge deal. They are outward facing, and we've already heard from the attorneys that there's a concern about privacy, and there's too many haves and have-nots as it relates to those cameras, because the lodge can't have them for a lot of very obvious reasons. So I don't like those. So Tim, based on, I was joking yesterday, the complaints or the request per square foot ratio that we're getting on this camera. What are your thoughts?
If a camera points at the door, then I think it should be approved.
All right. Discussion from the board. Anybody have any comments?
I'm a little more in favor of having them on the inside pointing towards the door rather than on the outside myself.
I understand that, but I think from a deterrent perspective, the idea is that if somebody sees a camera, they're probably not going to attempt to break in. Now, I'm a firm believer that there's been no attempt to break into this particular unit, but the idea behind the camera is to serve as a deterrent.
That's something else that we may want to do is look at putting these issues into our rules and regulations. So we've got something to hang our hats on.
Yeah, I mean, we have to document it. I'm sick and tired of this discussion, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So, I think we intended to do it the first time and we failed to do so.
Okay, I think that's a good point that Ron makes, and I agree. Let's write it down. It does appear to arise more frequently than seems, it seems strange to me that it does. I'm wondering if it would be appropriate, Scott, to actually do a monkey survey and just ask the ownership. Tell them this is our document, what our policy is under the rules and regs, and then just see what the response is from the ownership about supporting that as documented.
Yeah, before we cancel our SurveyMonkey subscription we talked about yesterday.
Well, we think we've got another tool, but yes, exactly. Either way.
When does that renew, Gary? December, doesn't it?
I don't know.
I mean,
I don't.
I'm certainly okay with it. Again, I've got cameras at my house here in Houston. I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of the owners have cameras. Obviously our concern here is number one, privacy. Number two, making sure that we don't have, we're not muddying up the look of the property or the facade with a whole bunch of cameras pointing all over the place. And certainly to a degree that we put some kind of consistency language in so that we, have some understanding of what these cameras are going to look like and how they're going to be installed and that kind of thing. So I do think it should be documented. It should be something that if we're going to allow for it, I'd like it to be allowed in such a way that they're like the window requests. If somebody wants to do it, we don't have to go through this whole jumping through hoops every time somebody wants to do it.
And once we develop the standards, then we can tell people that this is where you need to go, here's the standards, and it's cut and dry versus handling it differently each time, or something slips by one time, or it just provides a little more consistency to the issue, I think.
Okay.
Could we have Tim draft up just take a run at it, and then we could all look at it, and then I guess go ahead and do a survey. We could do that as well. I don't know how effective that'll be, but we could do that as well. But at least start with a draft from Tim and see.
Yeah, and one thing I would add to that is they're not our responsibility. If the damn camera doesn't work and they can't connect to the Wi-Fi or whatever the reason why they can't get it to work, I don't want Gary or staff getting calls saying, my cameras won't work. Will you please come up here and work on them? It's not our problem.
And I think that's something we would put in the policy that, you're on your own.
Because I suspect that in this particular case, we will get that.
Yeah.
It could be, if somebody called for service on them, it could be a billable.
It is a billable. I mean, we're going up to help this particular owner plug a printer into a computer on Monday at $50 an hour.
That's fine with me if you're willing to do it. I don't want us to be technical support for these things that people want to put in that are not standard for us.
That's not a big deal.
Yeah, I think you would have to outline exactly what we would be willing to do.
There she is.
Sorry, guys.
I didn't even see that you joined. Okay.
Yeah.
We have our quorum. We're official.
Yeah, and it might, I'm just throwing this out there as an idea. These things aren't rocket science to install, but we might look to a local contractor or, maybe Ting or, somebody local that would give us that standard kind of install standard process and ultimately, could serve as technical support down the road if need be.
If I can offer a couple of thoughts, I got some experience with installing these things and buying them and down at my place in Phoenix. And if it was me, if I was to make the decision or got a vote on it, I would say limit it to within the alcove of the front door or, somewhere where it's not, really openly visible to to someone, say, out in the parking lot. And the color, not white, some darker color that blends in a little better, and maybe limit it to just, pointing at the front door or the back deck door. And the other thing you might want to make sure you cover is these things need power. They're generally battery powered, but they can be hardwired. So you got to watch out for the wiring part of it. That would need to be done by an electrician. But you can also get I have one at my house, a small solar panel. But of course, that has to be out and visible so it can see the sun. You might want to consider that you can't do that because it's just too out there and in the open. My 2 cents.
Yeah, I think, obviously that's going to come down to, us developing what that standard looks like. We may require them to be wireless with batteries rather as opposed to them drilling in and doing, that's where the damage is, and that's where they're probably going to bail and not fix it if they leave and sell. So
if we put this in place, does that mean that a certain owner in Pinecone has to take his camera down that's on the side of his building and pointing out into the,
we're going to have
pointing at boys?
Yeah. We have to do it. Until Tim brought it up, I didn't thought the damn things had been taken off. So, that was what we told him then, and he obviously just ignored the request.
Yeah.
What about his underneath the condo?
Does he have one underneath the condo? Yeah, that's just so he can catch people messing with his wiring. Somebody cut his wiring way back when.
3 times, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Gary's
got a comment.
of course Gary does. You just don't want him look. You don't want her looking up your skirt.
Here's the question I have though. You can say you can install these, they have to point at the front door. What's to keep somebody from the day after it's installed turning it around and having it point out on the deck or out on the parking lot? How are you going to police that?
Well, if it's hidden behind.
Well, in this particular case, I'm assuming you are.
That would be Gary. That would be a rules and regs violation. If somebody observes it, you report it, just like anything else.
But nobody's going to go around
Well, no, but
and police the cameras.
no, but if you're walking by and you can see it, and it's like anything else.
Yeah,
I realize it's like anything else, and one of the things that's anything else is the dogs. No, I'm serious. We can't police all the dogs, and yet we get calls all the time about it. We can't police, the staff can't police the cameras, and yet you're going to have a bunch of cameras. I'll tell you right now, they're going to point out at the parking lot, they're going to point at the decks, they're going to point at the stairs.
Here's the difference. Catching a person with their dog off a leash, taking a picture of it, or not picking up dog waste, that's hard. If you got a camera that's pointing out the wrong way, that's easy to see and easy to report.
Nobody though is going to be looking for it.
So Tim, I'm going to let you chime in on this. If we have an approval process for this and somebody has to come through ARC and they have to get their approval, is it going to be that big of a deal for us to do an annual, as we're walking around the property, hey, go check those cameras?
Shouldn't be.
No, we go to every unit on this property twice a year.
That's my point.
Is taking a visual of the outside of a camera. We're already there a couple of times a year without even talking about maintenance work.
And maybe that's part of the rules and regs is we go in and say, if you violate it, we're taking them down.
Yeah. And I think, Gary, I understand what you're saying, but I think at the same time, this is going to be like other issues with rules and regs. You're going to have other people that'll be more than happy to police it for you. Because if they're following the rules and other people aren't, that's not going to go over well either. So I think in some aspects it'll self-police itself, hopefully.
Okay. So how do we encapsulate all of that gibberish into a motion?
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the windows on unit 226, subject to Tim's approval for matching. The fireplace in unit 624, 625. Venting of the laundry room in unit 765. And based on consensus, approval of a camera for unit 776 that must be hidden and not white in color and facing the door. And she will be instructed that if it's hardwired, that an electrician must install it.
Okay, so let me just make a comment. I would want to add to that, subject to finalizing a formal policy around camera installation on property by owners.
Okay.
And approval of the types of equipment that are being installed by property management.
Should
Can
we?
you repeat that, please? No, I'm kidding. I've got it. We're good.
I do have a question though, with this, and as Gary said, going back to how they get phone calls all the time, as to whose dog's off leash, who, whatever, whatever the issue is that someone is calling in. With that new computerized maintenance management that Tim is putting into place, should we require that instead of phone calls being received, that it ends up, complaints have to be filed electronically and or in writing and stop the phone call? And the only reason why I say that is because then we have a trail.
I think the new system that Alyssa is putting in also probably can help support that. But I agree. I mean, if somebody wants to complain, don't call Gary. Put it in black and white so that we can track them, and we have a record of them. I totally agree. I don't, functionally, I don't know whether that's the maintenance system or that's the new owner communication platform that we're installing. But I think it makes sense to do so. That way we can track, have follow-up, confirm when complete, that kind of thing.
I have a question. Can we hold off on the approval of the camera until after the rules are drafted and approved and adopted?
Yes. That's why I put subject to.
Okay, let me restate the
I
motion
wouldn't
then.
even vote on it.
I make a motion, we approve the windows subject to matching on 226, fireplace in 624, 625, and the laundry room in unit 765.
Okay.
So we just need a second.
I'll second.
All in favor? Got a discussion. Oh,
Any
discussion.
discussion on those? I think we already covered it, but any discussion from the board on those?
I'm just,
No other comments? Then
I got one question. On the laundry room,
Uh-huh.
why is that an ARC approval? Because they're going down through the floor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
all right, we got a motion and a second. We've had discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay, and then I'll make a second motion for unit 776 on the cameras. We'll defer on that subject now, pending a formalization in rules and regulations and specifications documented for installation of such devices.
I don't think you need a motion to table
I would
to
agree.
table something.
Okay, so we'll just table that one then.
So we're going to table that one. We'll deal with it in February at our next board meeting, and we will commit to get rules, regs, and technical specifications written up between now and then, correct?
Yes. Ron?
Yes.
All right.
Tim will scan all the documents for those first three and he'll email them to you.
Outstanding.
You asked for this, and you therefore are subject to 3 more months of emails.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
so
Take care of that.
we're done with rules and regs. So got my agenda down, but I think next is budget. So unless anybody else has anything to know, let's go with the budget.
Give me a second to, you need to enable
Yeah.
screen sharing, Gary.
You should be able to.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
No, I didn't disable.
I think it probably disables it automatically when you turn it on. You had to do this yesterday.
Go to that portion on here too. Try this.
You did something yesterday.
Yeah. Go ahead, try it now.
There we go. Everybody see that all right?
That's good.
Mhm.
I'm making it bigger for the folks in the room.
Joe, you'll send me a copy of the final version.
You should have gotten an update last night, and when we finish today, a copy will go around to everyone, yes,
Okay, thank you.
an updated copy. Okay, so this may look a little different, the highlights, the yellow highlights from the one I sent around to the board, because I went through it and just highlighted things I wanted to definitely touch on as we go through this discussion. So this first section is our is our revenues. The first column is the 2020 budget. The second column is year-to-date, what we've, in this case, what we've, money we've gotten. That's the word I'm looking for. There's a better word for that, but anyway. Received, yeah. Funds received through October 31st. Then column E is an estimate of what we think we're going to receive between now and between October 31st and year end. And then that adds up to the total estimated for 2020, which gives us a picture of how we did against budget from last year or this year. And then the 2021 is the budget amount for the coming year. So you'll see that in the past, we've done an analysis this time of year and determined what kind of funds we might have left over from our budget, from our, after we've collected and spent. And we typically always had some level of a surplus. As you can see, last year it was 120,000 in the operating and 75,000 in the capital. It's actually a little bit less, more than that, because then we don't show it on here, but we retain some money in our bank accounts so that we have a cushion, like a working capital amount for the coming year. So we don't start with zero. Why is 2021 showing zero? Well, it really doesn't, or it shouldn't, if we kept doing it the way we were doing it, but we decided yesterday to change up our plan, our process on this, our concept of it. And what we're doing is we're moving the entire surplus into reserves. So we have two contributions to reserves at the beginning of the year. Well, at the end of 2021, end of 2020, and then through 2021, we have another contribution. I'll show you where that is later. So this year, if I quickly go to the reserves page, you'll see, I'll open that up a little bit for you. You'll see contribution from operating $237,000 surplus from 2020 on line 9. Those are the numbers that if we kept doing it the way we had been doing it in the past, would be in these two cells right here. Why are we doing that? We're doing that because we're trying to be sensitive to owners who want to borrow money under the new Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac programs that we went through a change in our documentation so that we could be compliant with that. And one of the compliance parameters on that is you have to contribute 10% of your budget to reserves on an annual basis. So between that amount and the amount we contribute throughout 2021, that would put us over that 10% and make us compliant. So that's why we're doing that. But then we immediately turn around and we draw from the reserves $220,000 because we need that money to spend on expenses for the year. So it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors, but we're going to run that by the accountant, right?
Sure.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I think it's okay.
So quick question. I mean, there's nothing that says we have to immediately draw it. I mean, we could draw $100,000.
We could draw it out. We could draw it out over the course of the year. Correct. Yeah. That's just the budgeted amount. It doesn't mean it has to be drawn out immediately. Correct. Assessment fees billed to owners. Last year it was a total of $2,163,609. With this budget as it stands right now, and it's not done because the board can make some decisions in terms of puts and takes, we would be increasing the owner's assessments on an average of 4.6% for next year.
I thought that was 200,000 instead of 100,000.
What was 200,000?
4.6%.
No, it's 100,000. It was 100,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just, for the record, I think it's important to note that as we go through this worksheet, we'll kind of explain why we're, why we can have those adjustments. But, as we brought up yesterday in our meeting, which obviously nobody was really in attendance for, in 10 years, I think we've made one assessment adjustment. And, one of the reasons why we're going through this is the recognition of some rather large capital expenditures for repairs like the elevator we just spent $400,000 on, like the upcoming roof repairs, like the plumbing issues that we need to address, and really just the recognition that we need to start stepping up our reserves build in light of what the long-term replacement asset policy or long-term replacement asset spreadsheet is showing that we've got to address going forward.
And when we get to the reserves, the permanent reserves page, you're going to see that
right.
Our balance at the beginning of next year and at the end of next year, there's going to be a significant increase in the reserves, which was the objective all along. So, we added an item, miscellaneous revenues, recognizing that, for example, line 407, we budgeted a small amount. We received a much smaller amount. Line 409, same thing. So we're going to delete those line items because they're just too small to track. And we created miscellaneous revenues, which cover those two items. Plus, we've recently gotten into purchasing and then reselling Tamarron logoed items. All of you have seen the hats and the face masks, but there's some other things coming down the pipeline that will be available, and I guess we'll be selling those in the restaurant. Is that right, Scott?
Yeah, I put a provision in the contract with the restaurant that as they get their general store up and running, that we would be able to sell our Tamarron logoed items in there, and that we would benefit from the proceeds of those sales.
Yeah. Okay, so scrolling down to expenses, we saw a significant decrease in our insurance policies. Our agent Jennifer Wade with American Family worked pretty hard to shop our umbrella policy and get us a much better rate on that. Plus, she was able to get our directors and officers insurance and our employee crime insurance that were separate policies, and now they're included in the business owner's policy, which is our property policy. So we realized a fair amount of savings. As you can see, we had a premium of $107,000 and change last year, and we're dropping that down to $96,640 this year. One of the other things the two things that we tried to do to make this whole lender atmosphere a little better, one was the treatment of the reserves and the surpluses in the reserves talked about. We also went through this and we wanted to remove any references to a front desk or a rental program. We know we have them. We've renamed the front desk service and security desk. And so that line item used to be called front desk funding contribution, something like that. So we changed it to that. So as we go through this, guys, if you find any places where front desk and rental program are still there, I went through it last night and I tried to catch them all, but you never know. Outside of that, and the insurance, no real major changes in the administrative expenses. The other thing we did was recognizing that we have salaried management folks and we have hourly employees. Over here on the operations page, we used to carry our entire payroll with the exception of the people that worked at the service and security desk. They're in that separate budget. So in order for tracking things a little bit better, a little more granularity, we moved Gary Prisby, Elisa Oliger, and Tim's salaries over to administrative salaries, if you will. And then their associated health insurance and IRA contributions, FICA taxes, and then workman's comp. So that all adds up down there. So you're going to see a significant reduction in the maintenance salary package on the next page. For anybody that doesn't know, the IRA thing is a new thing. We're now offering as an employee benefit a simple IRA with a taco contribution, and then of course the owners or the employees contribute to that, similar to how you would do any employee-sponsored IRA 401k. Okay, let's go to the operations page. Okay, let me pull this up a little bit. Building maintenance. We were right on budget for that this year, a little bit over, we've upped the budget significantly on that one. Reason for that is we lost a senior employee. Mark Schmidt resigned a couple of weeks ago. He was kind of our in-house plumber. And this comes at about the same time that we're planning to do some major drain pipe plumbing repairs throughout the property, starting with the lodge. And so we recognize that we're going to probably have to outsource a lot of that work. So that's where that difference comes from. Let's see. Nothing real significant the rest of the way down. Last item there, a new line item. Tim Barnes come up with the program. Our employees are expected at this point to use their own vehicles on the property to get from complex to complex in the course of doing their daily duties. It's one of the things when Tim came on that he recognized was probably something we should change. So his plan is to purchase 3 vehicles. They'd be company vehicles. They'd be small pickup trucks. It's been suggested that these Gator type vehicles might be, one or more of those in place of the trucks might be a good idea. The purchase of the vehicles is on the capital page, but right here, this is the maintenance and the insurance, the ongoing cost to keep the vehicles, keep them going, gasoline, oil changes, tires, things like that. So that's a new item. Here's the salaries for this is all maintenance, landscaping, and janitorial staff, so all hourly employees. Significant reduction, and that's because the administrative salaries were pulled out of that and put on the previous page. Same thing, health insurance in the IRA, FICA taxes, and work comp. Utilities, we're in good shape now with satellite TV and internet. Costs have stabilized. They're remaining pretty stable. Haven't had any notices of any increases by either Groove Entertainment, who provides us with DirecTV, or Ting, Cedar, our internet and telephone service providers. So those are going to stay basically what they were last year. Water and sewer. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail on this because this is still an ongoing negotiation with Glacier. We've had 3 rounds over the last 2 years, 3 or 4 rounds of rate changes. First rollout came in 2019, April of 2019, then May of this year. And then within the last 6-8 weeks, there's been a couple of rounds of modified changes that were basically brought about by our participation in the Water Company's Advisory Board. Jerry Kutu's on that. Is Jerry going to, Scott, is Jerry going to give an update today?
I didn't ask him to because I felt like we just did it in September and not really a whole lot has changed.
Yeah. I want to have a discussion with this on this line item with the board in executive session. Again, it's an ongoing negotiation, so we need to be careful what we say because we got things cooking with Glacier and the Water Company. But I think there's an opportunity to maybe even lower this number a little bit. So.
Yeah, I mean, so that it is for the record, I just want to point out that Jerry has done one hell of a job backing into these figures and working very closely both with the advisory board, which is a little sensitive because as we negotiate our rate down, it affects the other customers on the advisory board. But also, really working with BBC. Doing the necessary negotiations, research, input specific to how our rates were calculated. And, as a result, we've probably reduced our apparent spend by 40%, give or take. I'm just pulling a number out of my head, so don't hold me to it. But I want to acknowledge that, this has been a lot of work and Jerry gets a lot of the credit on that. It is an ongoing negotiation. We're going to continue to try to finalize and get a permanent agreement in place, but we're in a hell of a lot better place we were now than we were when this started.
Right. So then looking at the bottom line here, you can see that our 2020 was, as Scott talked about, 2020 was a really weird year, and it continues to be, and we all know that. So we weren't able to complete a lot of the projects, spend as much money as we had planned. So we projected as of December 31st, we're going to have almost a $260,000 budget surplus. So that's where the large part of that money that goes into the reserves that I talked about earlier, that's where that comes from. And then of course for 2021, we always do this, we budget for, no surplus, no deficit. Capital projects is lined right here. I'll go to the next page and you'll see the details of those amounts. And let me blow that up. So on the top of this page is all the projects for 2019, how they performed, whether or not they're going to be repeated in 2020. That should say 2020. Yep. Yeah, boy, that's one I should have caught in the first revision of this thing. Didn't do that. Okay, there we go. So 2020, all the 2020 projects, how we did on them, and whether or not we'll be following through on them. And this kind of exemplifies what this capital projects budget's about. It's one-time things, or things that maybe don't happen more than a couple of years in a row. So as you can see, all these zeros are projects that were completed, and they won't be in the budget next year. Bat mitigation, we've determined it's almost going to be an ongoing thing. At some point, we may want to think about moving this to maintenance rather than capital projects. For now, we'll just leave it where it is. The deck railing paint, this is an ongoing thing. We do it in different areas each year. Just finished Gamble Oak, and now it's going to go to Pinecone next year. This cleanup item we did most of the underbuilding cleanup. That's pretty much done. This new item is for the storage areas. When Tim came on board, he surveyed the property, and one of the things that immediately stuck out to him was all the junk we have accumulated in storage rooms and other nooks and crannies in this, especially in this building. So we're gonna do something about that. And bunch of items closed out over here coming down. We didn't replace the RPCs in High Point, so we're going to do it again, and we're going to do it in 2021. Signage, this is new signage. Tim, you want to run through that real quick?
Sure. We're proposing to put a stone sign that's similar to the stone sign that's in front of the fitness center. Want to place this in the first planting bed as you enter the lodge parking lot. It'll include small sign. It'll have the branded Tamron sign as the primary. It will also provide a signage space for the Sotheby's real estate office and also for the base camp restaurant office.
Okay. Unplanned capital expenses. This year we put in some infrastructure for a vehicle charging station. Should we ever decide to do that, we did that in conjunction with trenching and running lines into the islands, the two islands that flank the porte cochere at the front desk, at the front entrance to the lodge. Excuse me. So while we were putting in irrigation there, we also ran the electrical lines to that same area. So if we ever decide to put in a vehicle charging station, we'll have the infrastructure in for it. I forget what other is, $250. Venting for the guest service center and the lodge. That was something we needed to do to get proper. That was for the dryer vents, right?
Yeah, the dryer vent
Yeah.
needed to be refurbished.
Yeah. And then this item just came up this morning. Well, it came up in the last couple of days, but we just discussed it. Tim and I and Scott discussed it. As the Penquites have been going through the restaurant, especially the kitchen, figuring out what they need to do to get it ready to go, they discovered that several items, and Tim, you may want to chime in on any details on this, but several items aren't to code: venting, plumbing, grease trap, or something like that. You want to tell them what it is?
Yeah, the plumbing at the sinks and the grease trap are not to code. The health department gave Brooke and Terry instruction on what is required. It's never been to code. I don't know how restaurants operated with it in its current configuration. The other major thing was the vent hoods. The Ansel system is inoperable. They'd spent some significant dollars bringing that just up to operation. And these are all unforeseen conditions when they came in, looked at the space, and signed the lease. So I'm grateful that we're able to help the restaurant operators.
Yeah. So what went into this decision was they're spending a lot of money on, especially in the dining room, changing lighting, painting. If any of you had sat in any of the chairs in there, you remember those chairs where you felt like you were going to fall through. They took the base bases, the seat, lower seat cushion off all the chairs, and sent them out and had them redone so that they're a lot more comfortable now. So they're doing a lot of things to make the place look better and feel better, I guess, if you want to say it. So they came to us with this problem. They've spent a lot of money. They're running short. They're getting stretched. And these I'm not going to call them code non-compliance items in the kitchen need to be taken care of before they can open. So we agreed to, we're going to agree to help them out with that, make those changes. It is infrastructure, it is equipment and materials. It's plant and equipment that belongs to Taco. So we're going to help them out with that.
And that's before the end of the year.
Yeah.
It's actually not a 2021 issue. Okay.
No, that's a this year thing. Yeah, get it done.
Joe, that's an important point. I mean, these are all hard assets that we own that needed, they need the upgrade. So whether it was them or somebody down the road, we would still be saddled with, making sure that equipment and the infrastructure therein was up to code. So.
Right. I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion on this 830. We usually put $25,000 in this, and as you can see, this year we're going to spend just under 14,000. So, that's been a good number over the years for things that come up that you just don't know about at budget time. And you can see some of the examples. There'll be some of that next year. You don't know what you don't know. Tim selected this line item to add another 25,000 to because of the plumbing refurbishment, the drain plumbing refurbishment project in the lodge. And I'm going to suggest that we knock that back down to 25 and leave it how it is, because if you know what you're going to spend it on, it doesn't fit this category. So I put lodge drain plumbing down here. And is 25,000 the right amount?
I've heard numbers anywhere from 15 to 50.
Well, I don't know whether you anticipated, Tim, that whole 50,000 in this line item going to your plumbing project, but if that's the case, we need to fix that.
I'd like to dedicate $50,000 to the first 1 or 2 stacks in this lodge.
So this becomes 50.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to put this back down. Okay.
Get rid of that comment up there, Joe.
Yeah. Okay. I'll remove all these highlights afterwards in case we want to come back to any of this. Contribution to reserves. I talked about the contribution of the 237,000. This contribution to reserves is what we normally do, and we put it in the capital budget because it goes towards capital projects, things that happen. Reserves are intended to be spent on not everyday expenses. They're intended to be spent on special projects, improvements, major things that need to be fixed. We got a whole long list of those, as Eric well knows. So this year we're anticipating putting a pretty big number in there, 183,797. I'll have to drop that by $25,000 now to make the budget balance.
That number is wrong down at the bottom.
Which
You've
one?
got a formula, the 490. I've
Yeah.
got 540, something didn't add, maybe your 50,000.
Oh, it didn't add that last, it didn't add the 50. Yep. Thank you for catching that.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So as you can, just to show you what happens here, what I just did now makes the budget not balanced by 25,000. So we've got to find $25,000 of expenses to kick out somewhere. So the the easiest one at this point would be to knock 25,000 out of the reserves. What does that add that for me? Would you?
Well, but hey, keep in mind, we talked about reducing the auto and some of those other things.
Well, if you want to just wait and do other things and then see where it ends up, let's do that.
Yeah, let's do
Let's do that. All right. All right. So permanent reserves. This is just a snap. This is a look at our reserves with details. And as you can see, our beginning balance this year, 700,647, and we've spent some money. We contributed some money, but we spent more. So our ending balance this year is 613,823. So that's over here. And with the expenses we expect this year and the money coming in, we've got interest from our laddered CDs. We've got the 2 contributions that I talked about, and then we've got rental. We decided when we bought Unit 110 and we put it in long-term rental that all of the revenues from that, less the Glacier Club dues that we pay, so that the tenant can have access to the pool and fitness facility. All of that revenue goes directly into reserves, because we took money out of reserves to buy the unit in the first place. So we're helping put that back. And then there's the amount that we're going to draw from reserves next year, same as you saw on the first page. So we'll bump our reserves balance this year from 613,832 up to 830,880. So mission accomplished on boosting the reserves. Service and security desk. Let me, 2020 was a really good year probably because of the pandemic for rental program. Everybody who had their units in the rental program, you probably realized a pretty good year. We realized well in excess of the admin fees from the nightly rentals. We budgeted 35,000. We collected almost 57,000, and we're going to budget 50 for next year. Long-term rentals went down a little bit because the number of long-term rental units went down. There was 25 long-term rental units, and the latest number from a few weeks ago was 14. And the same thing for the flat fee that those participating in the short-term rental program or renting their units short-term pay $30 a month. We fell short there as well. And that's again because we started the year with 105 short-term rental units, and it's now down to 87. Administrative expenses. We cut pretty deeply into this. Heather Dawson, we negotiated a new contract with Heather just in the last couple of days. A lot of her responsibilities regarding the service and security desk staff have gone away. Elisa's taken that over. So we've reduced Heather's compensation. She's still going to be doing some assistant work. She'll be here a day or two a week. And of course, she's managing her own rentals, and she's working with Elisa to make sure everything's coordinated, all the numbers. She still does quite a number of things, but she recognizes that at some point, this figure is probably going to go to zero, whether that's next year or the year after. The new contract we put in place, whether it has a 1-year cycle on it, and we review it and make adjustments based on what we've experienced over the course of the year. Marketing, Heather's doing all her own marketing now. So this budget basically went away. We left $1,500 in there because we subscribe to the Durango Discovery map, that cartoonish looking map that you can pick up all over town. We get a presence on there, and that's we pay for that presence. It's advertising for Tamarron. Rest of it's pretty standard stuff. We're going to continue the ski shuttle this year. There'll be, for those of you that are skiers, there's going to be some limitations. There's only going to be one van up, one van down from the ski area per day, and they'll be capped at 15 riders because they'll have to social distance within the van. So, if you're going to make reservations for the ski shuttle, I advise you to do it as far in advance as possible. Coffee service, we haven't done that since March because of the pandemic. And with the restaurant opening and being open for breakfast, we're going to delete that and not have coffee in the lobby anymore. Salaries, a little bit of an uptick from last year. As with maintenance salaries, we've tried to bring all of our hourly employees' salaries up to competitive market competitive with the market locally, so that we can not only hire people, we can retain them. Go out looking for other jobs because they think they can make more money somewhere, or they can make more money somewhere else. And this budget here had a little bit of a surplus, 11,960 last year, and of course we budget for a balanced budget. So that's it. I guess now we go to.
Hey, Joe, you kind of got, I think, sidetracked there on new projects. We didn't talk about the
Oh, I didn't even go
North Lodge or the.
Oh, okay. You're right. You're
Yeah.
right. We skipped
By
over that.
design.
Well, it's about 150,000 bucks in there. We want to talk about some of that.
Well, Lisa made me go right to the bottom, and I thought
Yeah.
we were done.
You might want to do 832, line 30 there too.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Back up. So yeah, 832, improved north area of the lodge. This is that parcel of land that we got in the land swap with Glacier a few years ago. Nothing's been done with it. The area looked pretty dry and ugly this year. So Tim, you want to talk about what's in there?
Yeah, I got a proposal from J&J Landscape, putting in some timber and stone steps up that slope. We've also included some plantings along the small slope to the west of the first tee, I'll call it. We got sod going in on top of the first tee and irrigation that would maintain that. We also asked for them to include a 12 by 12 timber gazebo at the north end of the first tee. That's what's included in that 48.5.
Okay, and this list here is all we call this Tim's wish list. This is all the new projects for 2021 that we could anticipate moving into all these blank spaces up here, projects that were finished. You want to talk about the major improvement to landscaping, Tim?
Yeah, Taryn and I drove the property, sized and identified the needs for each of the planting beds property-wide, and it's going to take $30,000 for bushes, bulbs, flowers, and trees, or whatever we want to do in the islands. So that's material cost only. We're going to plant all of this with our ground staff as spring allows.
And landscape irrigation upgrades?
Yeah, many of the outliers have irrigation zone issues. We've got to take a close look at our irrigation system. We have a lot of repairs to lines, heads, clocks, etc. Some of that, I would say the majority of the work is going to be done by our staff, our ground staff. There is a significant amount of work that's required, so I've got some money in here to pay some contractors. This will buy the parts and pieces and some contractors to assist with those repairs.
Renovate maintenance office.
We've got some space utilization changes I'd like to propose. The maintenance office, I'd like to take that space and create 3 spaces, one for workstations for our technicians. The second I'd like to get some walls around my desk so I can have a private conversation on the telephone. And it would also include build out of a conference room. So we have a small conference room down in that end of the building that is not available now. You used to have one, and so we've got the space. We'd like to put one back there.
Storage lockers and cages on second floor.
Yeah, on the second floor, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Heather's area. She has a long corridor where she stores and stocks her unit maintenance and laundry equipment, etc. At the back of that space, there's a dead space in the center of the building that is just a collection spot for junk. There's 10-year-old junk back there. And
I think some of it's more like 40 years old.
Well, that would be nice. I'd like to clean that out and create more owner storage cages. It's a potential revenue source. There's a waiting list of 15 owners waiting and asking for access to storage space. It'd be a great place. It's up the stairs. You know, carry your bicycle, your hiking gear, your tents, your camping gear, whatever doesn't fit in your closets in your unit. We suspect it'll cost about 16 grand to put the cages up and get some lighting improvements, and then it'll generate about $6,000 a year in rent.
Remodel admin and real estate office areas.
Yeah, the Sotheby's is interested in taking Heather's old office space to the west side of this back of house area. We're going to be in talks with them in the next couple of weeks about their participation in the cost of these improvements. We're going to take the existing real estate office, put a partition toward the back of it, and have Gary's office for owners, orientations, etc. in the front. So it's a much better presentation. They're not walking into a construction office after they buy a unit and learn about the rules and regs and how the place operates. It'll expand the space for the front, for the service and security desk personnel. So they'll have, their escape for security reasons. And so I don't know what that number is going to be yet. I suspect the $50,000 number is an extremely conservative number until I get through conversations with the Sotheby's and maybe get some contractor estimates. I wanted to be conservative on that number, but that's what it is.
Lawn equipment.
We're going to self-perform landscaping this year. To do that, we need to purchase another riding mower, $2,500. We also would like to purchase a couple $100 water tank, which will save Karen from carrying 1-gallon water buckets around the properties, watering flowers, etc., that are not covered by the irrigation systems.
Hey, Tim, while you're on that, if we look at buying, I'm going to call it a Gator. I know you looked at a different brand. There's likely accessories and things like that you could be added to that piece of equipment, I would think, for things like watering. I know I mentioned in my text, maybe looking at a blade for clearing snow or a salt spreader or those kind of things. So it just, not to change the number at any stretch, but it might be something that we want to look at if we end up buying that also.
Yeah, I'm going to take a look at some of those implements next week, Scott. I guess I'd propose that we put whatever implements in the capital line for the vehicles. I did chat with the staff yesterday, and I think our on-site transportation needs will be met with 1 pickup truck and then 2 of those utility vehicles. I've looked at 3 manufacturers, and we're going to go take a look at take one for a test drive next Tuesday and talk with them about the blade. And I think your sand or salt spreader is a great idea, specifically for the road going up to High Point, because they just do not maintain that to the level that serves our needs.
Well, we just throw salt out. My thought when I saw that was, hell, this would save us a lot of grief and, getting the icy areas uniced more quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're just going to go to that place in town out there by the airport?
I was gonna go, there's one in Bayfield that sells a Kubota. There's also
Okay.
one on El Camino. I forget, I think they're a Honda dealer. They're all coming in at around the same price point. So I'm gonna get some industry recommendations on which brand to pursue.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks.
Parking lot repairs and striping.
Oh, there's 3 significant patches we have to do, and we're also due for a striping in the lodge parking lot. There was, let's see. Yeah, that's all we're.
Talk about how this is replacing the program of sealing.
Yeah,
Parking
I've talked
lots.
with 2 asphalt companies, and the seal coat process that we do every 4 years on the properties. It looks nice. The significant part of that process is the crack filling. That actually extends the life of a parking lot. I'd like to get rid of that seal coat. It's a waste of about 60 or 70% of the number we've been spending every year, just basically painting a parking lot black without getting any value for it. We have to stay on top of our crack filling. I think we're going to do that every couple. We're going to be doing a crack fill project every year or 2. And then we've got the mill and overlay scheduled out on each of the lots over the next 8 years.
And now we are at purchase of company trucks.
Yay.
Yay.
I had originally requested monies to purchase 3 pickup trucks, 4-wheel drive, small stripped down pickup truck, the most basic 4-wheel drive you can get. They're $35,000 a piece. In our workshop meeting yesterday, it was brought up that we may be able to meet the needs of the program with 1 pickup truck and either 1 or 2 utility vehicles. The pricing of those are down at $21,000, which would include a ladder rack on top of it. It's a heated cab, so it's usable in the winter months. So the numbers I would like to propose, I think it was 1 pickup truck and 2 Gators. 21. 5, and this is all based on 0% financing, which is available at any car dealership. I don't know what the terms would be at the equipment place, but my new number would be $15,500 a year for 5 years. I think I'd probably like to bump that by $1,000. I'd like to carry $17,000, so I'm able to have a couple of bucks in to purchase a couple of implements. Yeah.
Okay. Landscaping per 2017 Glacier Agreement. The 2017 agreement was the one that let us out of the lease on the pool and fitness, the old pool and fitness facility. Glacier renovated that facility, and we have what we all know we have now. And it also gave us preferred membership in the facility and golf again. So we all know about that agreement and the memberships we got from it. Part of that agreement that was cooperative landscaping agreements in the area for the areas that are on our property boundaries. So this was within that agreement. It basically specifies the two parking lot islands that we have that are on our property that are closest to, that are farthest south, so closest to the Glacier properties. The west hillside going up from south to north of the lodge parking lot, the west side of the parking lot, And then also the peninsula where you turn right into the parking lot as you're going north on Tamaron Drive, and you pull into the fitness center and the lodge, where that stone monument sign is right now. So the original agreement to cooperatively improve those areas and share the cost was our obligation on that was $50,000. Tim's had discussions with Jim Goodman, who is not the person who negotiated that agreement. That was Bob Berkman, who's long gone. And Jim has somewhat different thoughts about this. Scott was talking to Jim the other day about it as well. And so we're putting money into the islands, the 2 islands already. Jim doesn't think it's worth it to do anything with that west parking lot area, hillside along our parking lot. But what they do want to do is something nice with the peninsula. So we're just throwing a number at it. I don't think it'll end up being 20,000, but that's what this is for, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and I do think that is a very conservative number.
Maybe we want to knock that down some. What do you think?
Like 12?
Yeah, I think so too. Okay.
Yeah, just so that we're clear, I mean, from what you guys said yesterday, we're probably pushing 20 grand already in just dealing with the islands, which were part of that agreement as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're digging holes and planting trees. Karen was working with Native Roots. Native Roots is going out of business, so they're selling off their inventory, and we're getting a good deal on some really nice trees. And so, yeah.
Yeah, we're spending about 10 grand on materials, and then we're doing all the work ourselves. Materials and some equipment. I mean, we've had some equipment doing some extra.
Yeah, Stan Horn dug the hole. Then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there we go. Security cameras. This was a new item we added yesterday. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, previously we've had requests to gather some information about placement of some webcams in the parking lots. Not only so that you can go click it on the website and see if it's snowing at High Point or at Pinecone or wherever, but also to capture some video of activities in the parking lot. I think this may have been spurred by a couple of events that took place this fall. To put in 2 cameras at each parking lot was going to be a total of about 8,000, as I recall. The conversation yesterday talked about perhaps adding a couple of security cameras around the lobby and the entrance to the lodge building, and potentially adding a camera or 2 in the owner storage areas. So we bumped the number to 15,000, and we're going to work on. I'm going to work with Elisa, finding out what the needs are for the security at the front desk, and then we'll get some hard pricing for this.
Service and security desk.
Yeah, so
You're gonna have to do a shot every time you screw.
I know. Yeah, we need to have a jar, and you got to put $1 in it every time you say front desk.
Anyway, that's what that line item's for.
hey, a couple of things on that. When we look into that, Tim, let's see. Remember, I had talked about the concept of webcams. Let's see if those cameras can be accessible. By an owner, if somebody wants to look at what the snowfall and that kind of thing. Let's just, as part of our research, let's see if that's possible.
Yeah, we talked about that before, having a webcam located somewhere.
Not the front desk.
Somewhere outside to.
Yeah.
Glacier has one of those, and it revolves. It does a panoramic view. I don't know if you've ever seen it on their website.
Yeah, I think it'd be neat to have
It
them.
goes pans back and forth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the other thing that Jerry brought up, which is we just need to remember that when we put this signage up, when we put these cameras up, we should have signage letting them know that we are recording, and we do have security cameras. So that needs to be part of the budget. I don't know that you need to increase it. It's not a material number, but just it needs to be something we do as part of this process.
And we talked about the lodge drain plumbing last go around. Did I miss anything else? I watched that.
Sorry, I just,
No,
you gotta
fine.
cover that.
That's fine. I get to cruising and I just. Okay, so back to the beginning and I guess discussion of any items that the board wants to tweak.
Well,
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, that's fine. Let's take a 5-minute break. I need another cup of coffee.
What's that?
I need another cup of coffee, so let me run down real quick and I'll do
Okay,
that.
let's take a few minutes then. Yep. Okay. And I go to something else, it shows on the screen. With Zoom, it only shows what you told it to show.
Yeah, that's
So
a good.
even if I go to one of my other applications,
Mhm.
which I just did, I'm not looking at that anymore. I'm looking at what I just opened up. But with GoToMeeting, it shows whatever's on your screen. So I like this a whole lot better.
Okay, we are recording and we are unmuted.
All right, what do you guys want to do?
What do you want to cut?
What do you want to cut? What do you want to add?
I want to cut some landscaping.
Yeah. Why don't we, well, Tim, you want to chime in on that? And then I know we talked maybe about adjusting that the work on the north a little bit. I mean, what are we trying to make up here? 25 grand or less than that now because we already made
Well, if all you want to do is cover what we already did, if you all you want to do is cover what we already did, you need 13,000. But I mean, you can do more than that.
How much was the gazebo portion?
7.
7.
But I mean, the steps are, I've got a Cadillac price for steps. I mean, it's 6x6 stained timbers with cut stone as the surface of the step. We could go in with some sort of gravel that, would get spread out. It's a really nice thing, but I think there's some money that can be saved out of the design of the steps. I'd certainly cut that gazebo out. It's not like anything, we could wait a year or 2 years or do it. It's $7 grand. Just go do the plantings and the sod and the irrigation. We're only 5,000 or something, and I definitely want to do that so it's usable. So I cut that 50 down to.
I didn't want to ask, but with the number of trees up there, you really think the grass will take hold? I mean, we can give you lots of examples around this property where the grass is pretty.
That used to be a T-box.
It used to be a
It had
T-box.
grass
Well,
on it.
There's no irrigation up there right now.
Right.
The reason the grass isn't growing is there's no water.
But, okay, do you need to sod it? Can't you just seed it?
You
I want
could.
instant gratification.
I think sodding is a much better idea, to tell you the truth. I mean, but
There's
especially,
going to be dogs are still going to walk up there every day, whether I seed it or sod it.
yeah, and if you
I
seed it,
seed it,
if
it's
you
not gonna
seed
grow.
it, it's gonna get beat to shit before it gets a chance to grow. Well, I think what you said, how much for the irrigation, sodding and plantings?
Fine. I think it's fine.
And then what about, I think you need to do something with the steps that where it's going from north to south, where it comes and then it slopes down into that retaining wall.
We're putting a retaining wall across, as part of the steps. There's a retaining wall, so there will be,
Is that part of the 5?
that's part of the 50 that's in here. It's part of the
What's
step.
what's the seeding, sodding, plantings and irrigation and that? What's that?
40.
Oh,
And I
that
think
much.
I could take some money out of that $35,000 of the steps and reduce the cost of the materials that are going into the steps. That stone, and replace that with some different product.
Yeah.
I'd like to cut that 48.5 down to 35.
What were we gonna do for 20 this year?
Where?
That was this year's budget, was 20,000.
We just
That's
stuck
just-
it. It was the number we stuck in there. We had no plan.
Yeah,
We had
it
no
was,
plan. Okay.
that was in case they came up with a plan. And for the peninsula.
So it's $100 to $2,000.
And
Just
that many beds.
that many, we can't.
So what does that leave us? That's the number that gets us there, does it not?
That leaves
Yeah.
us about 500 over or under.
I haven't checked yet. Give me a second.
While we're doing that, I had a sidebar with Tim and a little bit with Rick as well on the remodel of the admin. I asked him point blank, because both times he's referred to this as kind of a scientific wild ass guess. How much better could he improve on that 50,000 ballpark number if he had a couple more weeks to work on it? And he said, yes, he could. Seems to me we need to get a little better definition of that project before we actually budget for it. And I think maybe we can do that before we have to publish a budget December the 1st.
I'm fine with continuing to make adjustments up to that point. I know if I heard him correctly, he said he's got estimates from 15 to 50. So there's a lot of wiggle room in there.
Yeah, no, that's on, that actually was on the plumbing, Scott. This is tearing out walls and figuring out what Southby wants to do with that front wall and,
How much they're going to participate.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're on the Sotheby's deal. Okay.
yeah, yep.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to bring it up earlier. Yeah, that's just a plug. We have no idea what they're going to pay. So
Can't describe it any better than that. Yep. We
Yeah.
could, but we think we can do better if we give them a couple more weeks to talk about what, maybe reshaping it, maybe modifying it, maybe finding out what they're willing to do.
that's a fair point.
We can leave it as a placeholder if you want, but
If we think we can get that fine tuned in the next couple of weeks, let's just, we can change it and then obviously move figures around accordingly based on that.
You'll have to call a special board meeting to vote on it,
To vote on,
the budget, adopting the budget. You're either going to adopt it today or you're going to adopt it later. If you don't adopt it today, you've got to do it in an official meeting.
Joe, we can adopt it today and move money around later. I mean, the reality is we always stick numbers in here and don't always spend them all. So,
Okay, if you want to lock yourself into a bottom line and then shuffle things around within it, I guess you could do that.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and we had $238,000 this year because we didn't spend it, so.
well,
Put that at 45.5, Joe.
you could put 40.
With that
I'm hearing a pledge, a pitch for a 45.5 for balancing the budget. And you could just add that to the unplanned capital expenses line at this point.
What just happened?
Why? I did the same thing to me, Joe. I don't know where. And you put 50 and it goes right back. What the-
Something strange. Huh, that's really odd. I can't figure that out. Can you?
If you change it to anything,
You got some kind of control on your
Huh,
cell?
wait a minute. Hold on.
Yeah, it's got to be linked to something else.
We get this budget approved, I'm gonna run out of money in March.
All right, I'm gonna try something here.
I have my spreadsheets have been here before. I'm laughing with it, not at it.
All right, I'm gonna try something here. I'm gonna delete this line and then reinstate it.
Why don't you just delete the cell first?
Like, contents. Okay, so I cleared the contents of that cell. But it's still showing, oh, okay, so it's a $50,500 surplus. All right, no, that worked actually. So now, what did you say, 45.5?
Mhm.
How can that be?
It's like it's subtracting it instead of, or
Okay. Well,
Oh,
Joe
whoa,
is-
whoa, 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 whoa.
Okay. Did you change that?
So we changed, we knocked, what was it originally, 48.5? No,
48.5, yes, yeah.
so we changed,
Oh,
No,
Sotheby's
no,
was
no, no.
50.
it was 50.
That was 50,
50, sorry, yes.
and the,
So you, yeah,
Yes, yeah.
that's what happened. It's,
The
now we're
48.
showing a $5,000 surplus. We shouldn't have changed it to, we should have changed it to 40, we only wanted $500. We should have changed it to
49.5.
49.5.
Yeah.
That's why you get the big price. Yeah.
Still $1,000.
Try 48.
No, it's, that's,
50,500.
it's 50,500. Oh. There it is now, but that's too much. We wanted to cut it down, not go up. Right?
Yep.
So what did we say we want to do with this? Change it to something lower, 45?
Well, you're gonna give you a couple of weeks
Yeah.
to verify, but I thought you're just gonna.
All right, so now we're balanced. All right, so there you go. We'll leave it there, it's balanced, but you're gonna get quotes. We just went the wrong direction.
addition and subtraction on my screen.
Yeah, did we end up changing 832 to
Yeah,
35?
'cause-
Yes, there it is, okay. Yep.
So if you're gonna vote on this budget being what it is and what the assessments will be here, that's gonna stick. So if you lower this budget, this capital projects budget for this line, and you're able to cut $20,000 off of it, you're just gonna keep the assessments where they are and put that in reserves, I guess?
Yeah, be a current year surplus,
All right.
unless it's used somewhere else.
No, it won't be a current year surplus. We'll just up the reserves amount.
Yeah, I think we know we need up the reserve. So if it ends up going up 20 grand,
I just thought you might be looking for a way to knock down this a little bit, but if you're happy leaving that at 4.6%, that's as high an increase as we've ever had since I can remember.
but we've done one increase in 10 years.
Yeah, okay. No, if you're happy with that, that's fine.
I just think, realistically, I think, and again, I don't belong to a lot of condo associations, but having 0 increases over 10 years sounds.
Well, it hasn't been 10. I don't know where that number came from. We've had over 10. I know we haven't had one in the last 3 or 4, but before that, there were some increases.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and look, but
it seems to me like I've only had one. And
Yeah, that's where it was coming from, as he mentioned that, and that's my recollection too. And I think I bought in 2011. So,
okay, all right.
we got to rip off the Band-Aid, as I said yesterday, and start building on these reserves. So
Yeah, we're gonna have to build the reserves.
People are buying these places like crazy, so I guess nobody's really complaining about the dues if they're buying them, right?
I fully anticipate we'll have some people that do, but
I've had some people comment about the dues being high. And then when you explain to them, you've got to factor the TV, phone, internet separately, then they understand.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just a function of having the discussion around, I have a special assessment at my house 17 times a year because something I didn't think I had to improve upon, I have to improve upon. There's a lot of stuff we do.
Self-imposed special assessments. It's a good way to look at it. Yeah,
It cost me,
I got one of those coming up.
it happens all the time, right? You're constantly painting and, we do a lot of stuff on these units that people kind of forget about it. If they owned a home, they'd be doing it themselves and paying out of their pocket.
Yep.
All right, so where do we go from here? Are we,
If you're happy with everything, you got a balanced budget. You got a balanced budget on your operations. You got a balanced budget on everything's balanced. And if you're happy with it, vote on it.
all right, so Jerry, you're the only owner that can bitch at us. Do you have any comments?
No. I'm quite certain that we had assessment increases before the last 4 years. I think almost every year before the last 4 years. So we can double check that, but we have had increases in our assessments.
Well, I think we're not disputing that we've had some increases. I just don't think we've had, I know we haven't had one in the last 3 or 4 years. So at least since I've been involved. And that being said, given what we have to deal with, I still think we're in the same boat. So, all right. So do I have a motion to accept the budget as prepared?
I make a motion, we accept the budget as presented.
I'll second that.
All right. Any other discussion from the board? Jerry?
Yeah, I think it's just fine. You can set the budget today, and then if something comes in that means you need to tweak it, you can always call another board meeting, I think, to modify it and an amendment. Not true,
but yeah.
Are for posting the announcement of a special meeting and an agenda or whatever, how far in advance you need to do it. I don't remember that off the top of my head, but I think you can do that.
3 days. 3 days, Jerry.
Yeah, so you're good.
If we need to do that, we can certainly do it. Again, what we're doing here is stepping up our commitments to the reserves, which, absent a landslide of people complaining when they get notification, again, that's something we could certainly adjust next year when it came time to make a decision on how much money we actually move into the reserves. But we've got some cost figures in here that are estimates and not necessarily set in stone at this juncture. So there's going to be adjustments no matter how we kind of skin this cat, right? So.
And what you're saying is the board's general agreement is that any changes that we made would raise, if not lower, but hopefully raise the amount that we would put into the reserves and keep the bottom line exactly where it is. And I think from that standpoint, because all you're doing is doing a couple of tweaks, rob from Peter to pay Paul, I wouldn't think you'd need to, the assessment number stays the same. If you change the assessment number, then I think you need to go and have another meeting. But if you don't change that, I think you're all right.
Yeah, and that's my point. I mean, we have acknowledged the need to begin, refilling the coffers after the extraordinary expenses of the elevators and the big ticket items that are coming up, and it's time to start to do that. And hopefully, this adjustment we can take the next 3 or 4 years after this and leave assessments the same as they will be after the resulting calculations.
Scott, by the way, and Joe, that figure you have in for the assessment revenues for 2021, it represents about a 44% increase over what the assessments were 10 years ago. So there must have been many increases over that period of time. So,
I don't know that they were assessment increases though, as wouldn't the 3% annual adjustments to water and all those other things calculate into that?
of course, the water and sewer budget went into that.
Yeah.
But if you look at, I brought up the budget, the final approved budget for 2010, and the assessment revenue for 2010 was what the actual was 1.574 million. And that's, like I said, so the new figure represents a considerable increase over those 10 years. In fact, on average, it looks to me like it's close to a 4% increase each year on average. So again, I don't, because the assessments have not gone up over the last 3 years at least. It's hard for me to imagine that, except for maybe 1 or 2 chronic complainers, nobody's going to have problem with a 4.6% budget increase.
Well, and again, the assessments haven't changed in kind every year because of that. It's been the expense side, obviously, of the equation that have changed over time. And some of that's just cost of living, cost of, things that we're doing, property, utilities. That's just part of it. Okay. So we have a motion and a second, and we've had discussion. So all in favor of approving this budget?
Aye.
Aye.
Yep. With the provision, as we said, don't have to spend it if you don't really need to spend it. We can add it to reserves.
Correct. Okay. I think we have a 7-0 approval on that.
Okay.
This juncture, we can move into old business and new business. Do we have any old business or new business to discuss? Seeing as it's...
I've got an update on the mortgage survey if you want me to do that.
Yeah, might as well get it on record.
Well, it's, I've gotten this thing down after beating the owners about the head and shoulders many, many, many times. I've got this down to 6 owners who we know have mortgages on their units, and we know who the mortgages are with and what their address is, but we don't have the loan numbers. So this database is complete except for six loan numbers.
I think for purposes of this project, that's okay. We can cross that bridge if we have to, if there's ever a need to do a notification to a lien holder.
I will hereby then turn this over to our business manager.
Even as we
She's
speak,
running away.
she's on a beach somewhere,
Yeah.
mentally at least.
Yeah.
The only other old business that I know that we have to deal with is specific to the bylaw change that I'll have to get with Christina, and we'll have to punt on that one until the winter board meeting to see what changes we need to make. I just completely forgot to get back with her and get that notice out before this meeting.
Scott, you and I talked about this yesterday. I'm still of the opinion that we published it well in advance of 10 days in advance of the meeting, and we haven't changed the submission. I'm not so sure we can't vote, but you might want to ask her that question.
There were other items on there that she wanted to add after we did that.
Okay.
So I said, well, we'll just clean them up in November, and then I completely forgot to get back with her to get those revisions. So it's not a huge deal. I mean, the main thing we were changing was the ability to vote
Right.
electronically. So we're not going to lose any ground between now and February.
I was looking back at that, just for Jerry's, I went back and looked at the 2010 budget, and yeah, I mean, the assessment revenues, the assessments billed to owners is 1.8 million, and today we're at, what was it?
2.3.
1.
2.3, 2.7.
Yeah, well, no, I'm sorry, that's not right either. That's total revenue.
2.3.
2.1.
That's,
Yeah,
with no
before the
change.
increase.
Yeah, so it went from 1.8 to 2.1, and the thing that jumps out at me is one of the significant things there that isn't there is that in 2010, we did not have internet and telephone service. I mean, we had telephone service, but it was dirt cheap, and we did not have internet. Today, that's $227,987. And remember, that's billed as a separate line item. So that cuts significantly into that 40% or so that Jerry's talking about. Anyway, it's just one thing. I could probably find other things, but that's the one that jumps out at me.
Okay. And I would submit to you that going from 1.8 to 2.1 in 10 years is not catastrophic, even if that wasn't included.
Well, wait a minute, because take the internet and telephone service out, $200 and something thousand, and you're going from 1.8 to 2.2 is basically what you're doing.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, any new business? Okay, so we need to move into executive session.
Scott, can I just add one comment? Based on all of the feedback from the board over the last 48 hours, I think I now have, with Tim's help, a new revised long-term asset replacement spreadsheet. With your permission, Gary and I'll get together and post that to the website here in the next week or so.
Why don't you, so it's recorded here, why don't you just, can we display that real quick and just walk it through?
I can email it to folks. I'm not in a position, I don't think, where I can take over the screen.
Can you send it out?
Email it to me.
All right.
I mean, I think it'd be best to just do a quick walkthrough, since part of our adjustments are because of what we've adjusted there.
Hanging away. Hold on one second.
I've got to reopen my email.
Okay. It's called Draft 2020 Asset Replacements. Just an Excel spreadsheet coming your way.
Right.
Ron, did I see that you're already logged on to go to meeting?
Yes, I am. I'm actually in the room right now. You can't see me.
Okay, so Kathy and Scott, you have the login credentials for that?
I believe so.
Well, why can't we just ask Jerry to log out and just stay on this and stop recording?
You can do that, but somebody else may log on.
But you have to accept them into the meeting, do you not?
I do have to accept them into the meeting, yes.
Or you just decline?
Well, I'm going to be gone anyway, so by default,
There'll be nobody here to
there's going to be,
accept.
yeah. It's up to you, whatever you want to do.
Will your computer log out, or where, you know, if we see somebody logging in, I don't know if I can decline them from here.
I don't think that you can. I think I'm the only one who can decline.
Right, but if I see
Someone
somebody
could-
coming in, could Joe get up and walk over and decline them?
Sure.
Well, why don't we just do that?
Or you just don't admit them.
Just, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you don't have to decline, you just don't admit anybody.
Okay, well, why don't we just stop recording and just stay on the line and just ask Jerry?
Can you put it on here?
I mean, do we need Jerry at all to talk about the water? Maybe we ask Jerry to stay on. I don't know, Jerry, you heard everything we talked about yesterday, so it's kind of already been done.
What about Tim and I?
Yeah, I'm fine either way, whatever you guys want to do.
Yeah, I'd say just let's have Jerry.
Don't have any permit pictures or anything
Let's just
like
have Jerry
that.
hang up or get out, exit the meeting, and then we'll just keep going so we can knock this out.
Oh,
All right, me.
Should we leave?
Huh?
Do we need to leave?
If we're staying in here, yeah.
So I'm going to pause the recording, and then we'll pick it up again when you guys are out of executive session, just so we can record the adjournment of the meeting.
Yep, that's basically all we're gonna do.
All right,
That works.
all right, we're recording.
All right, can you, well, let's re-adjourn the meeting. It is 11:12. Two things, well, one thing addressed in the meeting we need to have a vote on. The other was, I mentioned before we exited that we were gonna quickly go over the long-term asset replacement. Joe, can you open that up?
Yeah, you need to let me share screen here.
Well, you're, okay, good, there we go. All right, Eric, you're probably best, I would think, to walk through this because you made the tweaks.
Okay, yep. We had one item that was in the 2021, that was the floor coverings in Sundowner and the lodge. We have moved that out to 2024. And I would just mention that many of the cells have a comment that usually addresses the useful life. So if you clicked on that particular one, you would say it has a useful life of 15 to 20 years. We need to look at it in 15 years.
For
Doesn't
some
seem,
reason, it's not letting me open those.
yeah. But anyway, that's just to help, again, our ownership understand approximately what the useful life is. To 2022, we have two items, a total of $300,000. That is a placeholder, again, assuming that the work that Tim is doing in 2021, our experiment, if you will, on the stack in the lodge is successful, and those reflect numbers that are certainly guesses at this point, but we would start to address these 50-year-old plumbing lines in the two structures that were built first. That would be the lodge and Pinecone. You see those are stretched out over 5 years in this spreadsheet. And then in 2025, Gamble Oak comes on board and goes 5 years. And then in 2027, we start a 5-year program up at High Point, which was the last property that was built.
Eric,
Mhm.
you've got 81 units in Pinecone?
Yep.
Or 73?
Okay.
Right.
Those are not necessarily related to the numbers, but I will change
Okay.
that immediately. Okay.
The other ones are all correct.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Pinecone's not.
You think I would know that one?
You think you would?
I'm guessing that was probably a fat finger somewhere, but, so the key point, I think, Scott, is that we got 0 for 2021, 2022, we're at 300,000. Then we ramp up very quickly in 2023 and 2024 because we're doing both plumbing and the roof on the lodge. 2023 is 690,000. 2024 is $890,000.
We're 2021 and 2022.
We got to build a lot of
We got to
reserves.
build a lot of reserves, and I think in 23 and 24, you're still looking at a partial special assessment to cover all that.
If those numbers are anywhere close to right, Joe. I mean,
Yeah.
again, we've got to do the work in 2021 before we have a better estimate. But
Yeah.
yes,
Yep.
there's no question, we cannot build reserves fast enough if these numbers are right to cover 2023 and 2024. I would remind the board members, and I won't be here to remind you when it happens, your policy does state that reserves will never go below a certain number. So I'm not going
What's that number?
I'll look it up as we speak, but it's on the website.
Ooh, I don't think there's anything in the declarations that say that.
No, it's in our policy, in our reserves policy,
Oh, it's in the
long-term
reserves
asset
policy.
replacement policy. Yep.
Okay.
So,
I'll look it up right now, guys, while you're on the phone, while you're going through this.
so I mean, I think 5 years, Scott, 6 years is probably far enough to go out. Tim and I have done a fair amount of work in simplifying some of this. We used to have freshwater lines in here. We've decided that those are all pretty well doing fine. And so we took all of that money and all of those lines out. We're dealing only with the waste pipelines at this point, pipes.
So Gary, when you get an owner who asks you, is there any special assessments coming? I think you can safely say that probably not until at least 2023.
And is that going to, okay, so that's going to be for all 4 areas. It won't be just the lot.
I don't think you can be specific.
Okay.
I don't think you can be specific. I
Okay.
think you just can say there are no right now, there's no special assessments planned for 2021 or 2022. 2023 is a possibility, but undefined at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, and the board has other options. The board could choose, as we had a conversation in the parking lot, board could choose to borrow some money rather than and pay it out over 20 years.
It would be an option.
It would be an option. Yeah, I think that's.
Okay, so just so that, I know you just mentioned this, Joe, but, so that this is on the record, the minimum by September 30th of each year is $250,000.
Yes.
So we need to keep that in the back of our head, but I think equally as important, one of the reasons why we made a decision to make the adjustments to the reserve contributions is, the addition of the major expenditures we just went through with the elevators, the upcoming roof repairs that need to happen, and the overall recognition that our plumbing is beginning to fail at a more regular, on a more regular period, and we need to really figure out how we look at a major replacement of plumbing. At this juncture, it's very early on. We're hoping the reserve contributions will soften any blow of a future special assessment, but it certainly is.
Never mind, I got it.
It certainly is within reason to share with ownership that there is the possibility of a special assessment at some point. But right now we don't know how to define it. We don't know what the true costs are going to be, and we don't know how the cost would be allocated between owner and association. So we made the decision to begin building the reserve base up in anticipation of having a better feel for that calculation sometime in the future.
Okay, so having shared this, you're ready to, I'll clean up the spreadsheet a little bit, but ready to post within the next week or so?
Yeah, I don't know. We don't need to have a motion to post it, but I would say if there's no objection, let's go ahead and get it posted, and we'll certainly address it in the communication that we send out to the owners when we send the budget out.
Will do.
Okay, the only other item we had to cover is we had one business item in our executive session that required a board vote. We have one owner whose assessment delinquencies have reached a point where we feel it's time for us to obtain approval to move forward and initiate foreclosure notification. We need to have formal board approval of that, so would like to get a motion to move forward with initiating foreclosure action on this delinquent owner.
I make a motion, we move forward on foreclosure, possible foreclosure action against the owner discussed in executive session.
Okay, got a second?
Second?
Eric, was that you?
Yes.
Okay, so we got Rick and Eric on the motions. Any discussion? Okay, well, All in favor of moving forward with the foreclosure action on this delinquent owner, say aye.
Aye.
Just since we're somewhat remote, any opposed? Okay. All right. So any other discussion before we adjourn this meeting?
I think so.
Well, it is, put my glasses on to see my damn clock.
11:22.
22. I make a motion that we adjourn this this meeting.
Second?
Second.
Why the fuck?
Amen.
I'll do it the reverse way. Anyone opposed? All right, guys. Thanks for helping out. Meeting's adjourned. Go enjoy the rainy day. I'm going to go ride my bike in a beautiful day.
Enjoy.
Bye,
All right.
everyone.
Take care.
Be safe.
I'll take care.
Thank you. Bye.